Yo! Got a 2007 Jeep Compass in here. The guy says it needs a starter because it was sounding really bad for a long time, and then he was driving down the road and it just started sputtering and some lightning bolt came up on the dash and it wasn't running right at all. So he's thinking, oh, it needs a throttle something or another too. Probably a throttle position sensor, an accelerator pedal position sensor, because he Googled it and that's what it is. So it's going to need a couple of things, and he towed it here. He bought a nice new starter for it and he wanted me to put that in. Anytime I hear stories like that, I don't believe it. And you don't want to just do what they tell you. You want to look into it first. So the first thing I did, take off a couple of these little plastic nuggets that hold this cover so I can move it back, and I got a 22 millimeter on the crankshaft. Put a 22 millimeter on the crankshaft like so, and try to rotate the engine, and this thing's locked up solid. Starter my ass. I suppose I could check the oil, see what that looks like. It actually looks really good. I don't see any metal flakes in it. Ah! Let's say a prayer for the dead. Anytime you see red on a connector for a Dodge, it's a child-proof connector. So you always get to spend a little extra time taking a connector off on these. Just pull them back. They come out like that. I'm sure there's supposed to be 10 millimeters on this battery. One's got a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter on the positive. Somebody replaced it, obviously. I always disconnect the negative first. The 13 millimeter on the hold down. Pull it back and this thing should come right out of here. There's a breather hose here. I think this air filter box just pulls right out of here. There's just some rubber things that hold it in. Looks like there's 5 13 millimeters on this battery box I'm going to take off. Now before I get too carried away, there's an inspection cover right here on the engine for the transmission. This is a manual transmission, but it's got a modular clutch in it. So there's actually a flywheel on this clutch that's like an automatic transmission. And the only way I can separate this engine from the transmission and get the engine out with it in the car is if I take these bolts off, just like as if it was a torque converter. But this engine is locked up solid. I can't turn the engine. So I'm gonna need to turn the engine unless I drop this engine and transmission down on the ground. So I think I'm gonna have to take the oil pan off. Usually when they're locked up, it's because you got a connecting rod bearing that wears out, and the two bearings overlap. And when they overlap, the more they overlap, the tighter they get until the engine just doesn't move anymore. So I'm probably going to have to find out what connecting rod this is, loosen it up so I can turn the engine over. That's got to be what's going on with this thing. I hope I'm right. Well, this kind of sucks because I can take these rods and I can move them. And all 3 of these rods that I can get at, they all have movement. This one up here does too. And I know this chain's loose and I can't turn this flywheel. What in the... Holy... What in the... I gotta put this pile of back together. I just stuck my finger up here and I got chunks. There's big chunks that wedged in between the clutch. It's probably a starter. I actually told this guy a year ago he needed a starter and he procrastinated. He waited and waited and waited. Then he finally bought one, and by that time, this thing just came apart. It's all blown up and it's all wedged up in between the clutch and the transmission. This thing doesn't have a bad engine at all. Son of a I'm gonna put this all back together, back to spec, seal it all up. I'm gonna take the transmission out of this piece of It's a connector on this throttle body. They're a total pain in the butt to get off. It's hooked on this pipe. There, I finally got that off. Pain in the butt. This side broke. There's an 8mm hose clamp on here. The 13mm clamp on this throttle body. That bolt right there, 13mm. And there's 4 10mm on this throttle body. And I should be able to get this throttle body out of here. There's a gasket here I'm going to take out. These are usually reusable. There's a bunch of in the bottom of this intake. That's what happens when you put a throttle body lower than everything. 2 15mm for this starter. One's got a ground attached to it. Oh my God, there's nothing left of that thing. I'm going to unplug this sensor and get it out of the way because I think I can sneak this up. It's hitting the knock sensor. Got to be careful of that. Out comes the junk. I just got to get them wires off of there. This is a push connector. You push this tab in and it pops out. This is a 13mm. He said, yeah, just before it died, it wouldn't run right and it sounded like a popcorn popper. Oh, really? Since I have to take out this transmission, I still have to get the engine to turn in order to do it. So I think I'm gonna unbolt the bell housing and hopefully I can get enough room to where the engine will turn before I take the transmission all the way out. First thing I'm going to do is deal with this transfer case back here. There's 2 bolts on the top that I can see, and I think there's 3 on the bottom. And I got this cheesy little plate here. I'm going to have to bend out of the way so I can get at this bolt here, and then this other one, and then I'll get at the other 3 on the bottom. And then I'll just try to separate it and get it out of the way. Now that I bent that heat shield out of the way, I can actually get at these top bolts. I got a 3-foot extension and a little extra right along the passenger side. I can get them bolts out with. I suppose before I separate that transfer case, I better drain this transmission. I don't want any fluid going all over the place on me. Looks like I might want to replace this seal too if this transmission is still good. If it's still good. This is an 8mm. Have 3 14mm left. Got to get these axles out. This socket's 1 1/4 inches. I don't want to hit on that too hard because I don't want to damage them threads. They smush real easy. I got a pinch bolt on this lower control arm. It's an 18mm. And I could unbolt the strut, but if I do, it might throw off the alignment, so I'd much rather take off this pinch bolt. One of these ball joints must have been replaced before because this side's a 19 and the other side's an 18. These pinch bolts can be fun. Sometimes you can get a chisel in here and spread them open a little bit Looks like somebody already did on this one once. I got a really long chisel on an air hammer that I love to use for these things. Popped it right out. I think I found one more. I'm pretty sure it's this one right here. This bolt was corroded in really bad. I'd use a really long extension and a really long ratchet to get leverage on that. The thread's wasted. This one was hard to get out too. So if you got a wrench or some little stuff for these, you might as well give up on it before you start. If you live in the Rust Belt anyways, because they'll be rusted in. Okay, all 6 bolts are out. Now I can try to separate this thing. See if fluid goes pouring all over the place. Ooh, 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 something happened. Ooh, ooh, ooh. There it is. And I figured it'd drip all over the place. Now that I did all of that, I'm going to loosen up as many of these bell housing bolts as I can. There's one that's way up there. That's kind of buried behind the transfer case. That should be the one that's the most fun to get at. There's still 2 more bolts on the top of the bell housing. I'm just going to take this thing and pop these up. These goofy little shift cables, they just pop right up like this. Okay, I had to get that off so I could get at this one bolt down here. Be using a 14mm swivel socket on this one too. I got one more I missed right here. More idiotic Jeep engineering. That bolt was not fun, nor was it easy to get out. These are through bolts, meaning that there's an open hole on the back side, so they allow this crap to get corroded. So when it gets old like this, it's not even that old of a car. They don't come out. Well, here's the moment of truth. Failure or victory. It did spread open, obviously, because there's wedged in there. Jesus, man. What a bunch of... Oh, it moved. Hey, I'm winning. You piece of... These torque converter bolts are an 18mm. I'm going to have to hold on to this with a wrench and get this piece of crap off by hand. Oh yeah, it's grinding. Crunchy. Ooh. What a bunch of... This is how I'm going to support the back of the engine. I'm not getting too carried away with this thing. There's one mount in the front that's going to hold the front, and I got to take 2 mounts in the rear off. So this is kind of loose too, but it's fine. I think it's going to be okay. It should drop the transmission just a little bit. Got a 13mm on this clutch line. There's a little clippy thing right here I got to pop out. The clippy thing. And I get the clippy thing off, and this thing should just come right out and leak all over the damn place. So I'm going to kind of fish this out around everything and keep it up high so it won't leak anymore. I just strung it up there so it's up high like this. It's got to be higher than this master cylinder, so I just put it up here. Got one wire here I got to take off. Chrysler's been whoring so many different parts out to different manufacturers just to build this piece of crap that there are 16s, 17s, and 18s on all of these mounts to get all of this stuff off. It's obvious they can't figure out which whore to use. I got 2 bolts up here that are 16mm. This one's an 18mm. Got a 16mm on this mount. These two are 17 millimeter. I can get this out of the way. I had to take that bar out of there so I can get at this one bolt that's buried up here. I'm going to try to jack up on this and give myself a little more room. This feels like a 16 millimeter. I got a 16 millimeter on this mount. Taking this mount off. These are a 17 millimeter, by the way. I'm hoping that'll give me enough room when I pop it out to slide it forward so I don't have to take that mount off of the back of the transmission. I just strapped this down quite lazily to my transmission jack in the hopes that it won't go anywhere. These are 18 millimeter. Okay, it fell. This chain's tight. I'm just going to try to take it out. The junk is out. Won't it be fun to see what's behind this clutch? This is what a modular clutch looks like. This should just pull right out. And the flywheel and the clutch is all in one assembly. And chunk. There's clutch dust everywhere. I'm not putting this back together without putting a clutch in it. He just busted a couple of pieces off of this. Hopefully it won't leak. I think I'm gonna run it. What a piece of junk. Nice chunks of everywhere. Jesus, man. Well, that's why it was jammed. I was just going to use a thread chaser, but now I know that's not going to work. I got to use a tap. These 12125s, you usually never find these in a normal tap kit either. I had to buy this a long time ago. Looks like some kind of hell. That looks almost normal. Yeah, whatever. It's a Chrysler. It's some kind of amusing piece of hell. It's fine. Healy coil time. I'm going to do this dry. In case you don't know what these are all about, it's a stainless steel thread insert. This will actually be a stronger thread than just aluminum alone. A lot of race high performance applications with like aluminum cylinder heads and stuff, they like to put these on them. You got a thread insert tool here. It's got a little stopper on it. I'm just going to try to stick this in here and screw it in. Hopefully it'll go nice. Oh yeah, no problem. I'm a good half a thread in on the threads I made. So that's cool. There's a tab in there. I want to just poke something in there and it snaps off. It's better than new. There's no wonder why the threads on this one get wrecked to the point where the threads come out with the bolt and it gets all stripped out. It's a through hole. And the through hole is down in this little pocket, so it can always have moisture and condensation down there, just corroding everything up. What a strange thing to build. This one I have to Healy coil 12125. I just started a couple of these bolts so I can eyeball them this way and this way just to make sure it's going in nice and square. So I gotta kind of grab this tab and just pull it back a little bit because it was one tooth in too far, and now it looks right. Same here, just try to find something to stick in the hole and bust that thing off. I gotta get this throwout bearing / slave cylinder off. There's a clip right here. I gotta pop up like so. And I should be able to pull this piece out like that. Little O-ring on here. Got a couple 10mm on here. I'm just guessing, but if you were to use a torque spec on these, I'm sure it'd be right around 8 foot-pounds. That's just a guess. I'm going to do it by hand. Take this thing out. These feel kind of funny. I'd rather do it by hand because I can feel the plastic squishing. It feels really strange. I'm going to put a little silicone paste on this seal, this O-ring. Make sure it slides on really nice. And stick it in the hole. Should just snap right in. I also took some emery cloth after this chamfer right here. I made sure there was no burrs on it or anything, so it slides in really nice. I blew off all the junk that was parked behind this engine flywheel. I want to put a little silicone paste on this vent O-ring. I'm going to reuse the old one. I'm going to reuse the O-ring on here too, and I'm going to put some silicone paste on it. Make sure it slides on really nice and it doesn't bind up. Just stick the thing on here. Ow. I don't trust this big dumb thing to stay in here on its own. I got 2 bolt holes right here for the mount, and they both go through. So I'm just going to push this in all the way and just stick a 1/4 inch extension in there just to keep the thing from falling out. Time to try to put this goofy thing in here. I'm going to put some red Loctite on these flywheel bolts. I can't tighten them down all the way yet either. I'm just going to get them like 1 turn loose. Because if I get them too tight, I won't be able to start the other. I got to put this clutch fluid line on. I'm just going to put my finger on it so it doesn't leak out. And I put a little silicone paste on this O-ring too. I need to bleed out this new slave cylinder. Put a drain pan down on the floor. There's a little cap here I gotta pop off. I should be able to just turn this counterclockwise and it opens this valve up. And then it starts dripping out like crazy. I'm gonna work the clutch and see what happens. The clutch feels like a bunch of donkey shit. I pumped it about 10-15 times. Yeah, there's air coming out of it again. I better put some brake fluid in this reservoir. Maybe I'm out. Got pure clean fluid pouring right out of here. I'm pretty sure I emptied the master cylinder for the clutch. So I'm going to pinch off this line right here. There's a flexible hose. I'm going to get a vice grip and just lightly pinch it off. Like so. I'm going to hit the pedal a bunch of times, see if it's hard. It should be rock hard now. And it's not rock hard, it's all spongy and mushy. So I definitely have air in my master cylinder. I emptied out the master cylinder for the brake. I emptied it out too much. So I got to take this vice grip out. I got to drain this a whole bunch till air comes out of here. There's the air. That didn't take long. I did my brake bleeding trick I already posted on the internet because apparently nobody's ever done it before and there's no videos on it. I deadheaded this thing. I had a real mushy pedal and I bled it and bled it and bled it until I got just a little bit of pressure coming out of my slave cylinder. and then I pinched this off, and I could put the pedal down about 3/4 of the way before it started feeling like it got any pressure. And then I put the vice grip on it. I pushed it all the way down so it actually puts pressure in this side of the line and not the other side. And then I did that a couple of times. And I let the pedal back up, and I just came out here and I took my vice grip off, and it made a squirting sound, and now my clutch pedal is really hard. I can put this vice grip back on it, and I can hit my pedal now, and instead of it being all squishy, it's right all the way on top, and it's hard as a rock. So it took air that was in the master and pushed it up into my brake cylinder. Yeah, wow, that might have done it. Let's see. Take my vice grip off and see how it feels now. Now my clutch feels absolutely perfect. Time to deal with the wonderful starter thing. You know what you do with these licenses of steel? You throw them out. Some poor slob just paid for a license of steel. Okay, before I put transmission fluid in here and all that jazz, I'm going to start this thing, make sure it wants to run, make sure gobs of stuff falls down in the throttle body while it runs, and I just need to see what happens. Okay, I almost drove the thing off of my twin post because it's the rear wheel drive's working, and the clutch is working. Okay, I'm gonna put some transmission fluid in this, a pair of tires, go get a bottle of sake, and suffer from depression because somebody made me work on this piece of junk. Okay, bye.